Officer Declan Rourke straightened the tie beneath his immaculate uniform and confidently placed one hand on the Bible. He was preparing to send another innocent citizen to prison with a carefully fabricated story. Glancing toward the black woman seated at the defense table, he expected to see a frightened and defeated victim. He had no idea he was looking at a federal agent. Rain poured over Chicago in relentless sheets, washing dirt from the streets of the South Side and carrying it into the storm drains. But no amount of rain could cleanse the corruption buried inside the 14th District. Officer Declan Rourke sat behind the wheel of his patrol car, watching the neighborhood through the windshield as the wipers beat steadily against the glass. To the city, Rourke was a decorated and experienced police officer. To the people living in the neighborhoods he patrolled, he was a nightmare. A man who used his badge to extort, intimidate, and destroy lives without fear of consequences. Beside him sat his rookie partner, Officer Nolan Pierce, a young graduate fresh from the police academy who was quickly learning what Rourke considered real police work. "Watch and learn, Nolan," Rourke muttered, his eyes fixed on a faded Honda Civic turning onto Halsted Street. "We need numbers, and I need money for a new motor for my boat. Let's see whether this driver wants to pay the street tax." What Rourke did not know was that the Civic had not appeared by accident. The woman behind the wheel was not another vulnerable civilian. Her real name was Special Agent Alana Brooks, an experienced member of the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. For months, the Bureau had quietly been constructing a major federal case against Rourke and the officers working with him. The investigation had been given the codename Operation Shattered Glass. Confidential informants had described Rourke planning narcotics, demanding cash bribes, and falsifying official reports. But rumors and whispered accusations were not enough to secure a federal indictment. Unit Chief Bennett Cross needed to record Rourke committing a felony as it happened. Alana had volunteered for the undercover assignment. For the operation, she became Tessa Monroe, a night shift nurse returning home after an exhausting shift at Mercy Hospital. She wore faded medical scrubs and her hair was pulled into a loose, untidy bun. She looked exactly like a tired civilian desperate to get home. Hidden beneath the collar of her scrub top was an advanced miniature camera. A biometric recording device had been secured against her ribs, transmitting clear audio to an unmarked surveillance van parked several blocks away. Inside the van, Chief Cross and a team of federal technicians watched and listened in tense silence. Red and blue lights suddenly appeared in Alana's rearview mirror. The siren released a short, aggressive cry. Her pulse remained steady. Showtime, she thought. She guided the Civic to the side of the road and lowered the window just enough to allow the damp, freezing air to enter. Rourke approached with a practiced and intimidating swagger. He did not simply walk toward the car. He stalked it. Before reaching the driver's window, he struck the trunk with his heavy flashlight. The sharp, violent sound was designed to frighten and disorient the person inside. "License and registration," Rourke demanded. He directed the blinding beam of his flashlight straight into Alana's eyes. "Officer, was I speeding?" she asked, placing the perfect amount of nervous uncertainty into her voice. She pretended to struggle with her purse before presenting a professionally forged Illinois driver's license. "You were swerving," Rourke lied effortlessly. "You crossed the center line. You've been drinking, Tessa." "No, sir, I just finished a long shift at the hospital. I'm only trying to get home." Rourke leaned closer and rested his forearms against the edge of her window. The smell of stale coffee and peppermint gum drifted into the car. "Here's the situation, Tessa. I can charge you with reckless driving, tow your car, and leave you sitting in a cell. The legal fees alone will cost you thousands." He paused, allowing the threat to settle into the cold air. "Or we can take care of the problem right here." He lowered his voice. "You pay the fine directly to me and I allow you to go home." Inside the surveillance van, Chief Cross leaned toward the monitor. "Say the amount, Declan," he whispered. "Ask her for the cash." I don't understand," Alana stammered, continuing to play the frightened victim. "Are you asking me to bribe you?" Rourke's expression hardened. The false friendliness disappeared, replaced by cold hostility. "Wrong answer," he said. He stepped back, opened the driver's door, and jerked it outward. "Get out of the car, now." Alana obeyed while keeping her hands clearly visible. Rourke slammed her against the wet side of the vehicle and roughly kicked her feet apart. Nolan Pierce stood awkwardly near the rear bumper, watching his senior partner cross a dangerous line. "Let's see what you're hiding," Rourke snarled. He leaned through the open doorway and pretended to search the floor of the car. Using a movement he had perfected over years of corruption, Rourke removed a small transparent plastic bag filled with white powder from his own tactical vest. He dropped it onto the passenger seat. Then he stepped back and aimed his flashlight at the bag. "Well, well, well," he said as a cruel smile spread across his face. "Look what we found. Apparently the little nurse likes to party." He studied the bag theatrically. "That looks like possession with intent to distribute." That isn't mine, Alana cried, allowing her voice to echo across the rain-soaked pavement. You put it there. I saw you. Rourke laughed. No one is going to believe a street addict over a decorated police officer. He pulled the handcuffs from his belt and seized Alana's wrists. The steel restraints closed tightly enough to bite painfully into her skin. You had an opportunity to make this easy, he said. Now I'm going to destroy your life. As the handcuffs locked around her wrist, Alana lowered her head to conceal the fierce, calculating expression in her eyes. Every word had been captured. Every movement had been recorded. The precise moment the bag left Rourke's vest and landed inside the Civic had been preserved in high-definition video and securely transmitted to federal servers. Rourke had swallowed the bait completely. The holding cell inside the 14th District Station was a miserable concrete room filled with the odors of bleach, vomit, and despair. Alana sat on a cold steel bench and watched a slow procession of detainees move through the booking area. She had been fingerprinted, photographed, and stripped of her personal belongings. The Bureau needed to handle the operation perfectly. Pulling her out too early would alert Rourke that something was wrong and destroy the investigation. Federal investigators needed the paperwork. They needed Rourke to prepare a false police report and formally swear that its contents were true. Only then would the trap become impossible to escape. From her cell, Alana watched Rourke typing aggressively at a nearby desk. She knew exactly what he was writing. He was describing a routine traffic stop involving erratic driving. He would claim that the suspect had become hostile, creating probable cause for a search. He would report that a substantial quantity of cocaine had been discovered in plain sight on the passenger seat. Later, a man who appeared to be an ordinary bail bondsman arrived with cash to secure Tessa Monroe's release. In reality, he was another undercover FBI operative. As Alana left the station, rubbing the bruised skin around her wrists, Rourke leaned against the front desk and drank his coffee. He tipped an imaginary hat toward her. I'll see you in court, Tessa. Find yourself a good attorney. I will, Alana replied softly. The FBI then allowed the local justice system to move forward with the case. Assistant District Attorney Marissa Caldwell was assigned to prosecute Tessa Monroe. Caldwell was fiercely ambitious and firmly believed in the integrity of the Chicago Police Department. She reviewed Rourke's carefully written report and confidently prepared for the preliminary hearing. She had no idea that her most important witness was the target of an enormous federal investigation. She also did not know that the public defender representing Tess Monroe was actually Sterling Vaughn, a relentless senior attorney from the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. When the hearing began, the Cook County Courthouse was filled with activity. The air conditioning system inside the wood-paneled courtroom was broken, leaving the room oppressively hot. Rourke entered wearing a sharply tailored suit and carrying himself like a heroic police officer. He exchanged fist bumps with several fellow officers seated in the gallery before taking a place behind the prosecution table. He barely looked toward the defense table. Alana sat there wearing a cheap, poorly fitted blazer over a modest blouse, presenting herself as a desperate woman whose life had already been ruined. Judge Everett Halston, an uncompromising jurist with decades of courtroom experience, struck his gavel. State of Illinois versus Tessa Monroe, possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute. Is the state prepared to proceed? Ready, Your Honor, Caldwell said as she rose confidently. The state calls Officer Declan Rourke. Rourke walked to the witness stand, placed one hand on the Bible, raised the other, and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. He sat down and adjusted the microphone with practiced ease. During Caldwell's direct examination, Rourke appeared charismatic, professional, and convincing. He painted a vivid picture of a dark and rainy night. He described Alana's driving as reckless and dangerously erratic. He claimed that when he approached the vehicle, he immediately detected the smell of a masking substance and saw cocaine resting openly on the passenger seat. Officer Rourke, Caldwell asked as she moved across the courtroom, did the defendant say anything when you discovered the narcotics? Yes, ma'am, Rourke answered smoothly. He looked directly toward the judge with an expression of sincere public duty. She begged me to ignore the drugs. She offered me money in exchange for letting her leave. When I refused, she became verbally abusive. Thank you, officer. No further questions. Caldwell returned to her seat and gave Rourke a look of approval. The courtroom remained quiet. In the minds of the judge, the prosecutor, and the spectators, Tessa Monroe was already guilty. It appeared to be a simple and undeniable case. Sterling Vaughn slowly rose from the defense table. He fastened the button of his suit jacket, picked up a single manila folder, and walked toward the center of the courtroom. He did not move like an exhausted public defender. He moved with the controlled precision of a predator. Officer Rourke, Vaughn began, his voice smooth but edged with danger. You appear to have an exceptional memory. He took another step forward. You remember the rain, the defendant's exact driving behavior, and every detail of your conversation. You have sworn under oath that the narcotics were in plain sight and that my client attempted to bribe you. That is correct, Counselor, Rourke replied. He leaned back in the witness chair, radiating arrogant boredom. Officer, are you familiar with the meaning of perjury? Vaughn asked casually. Caldwell immediately stood. Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative. Overruled, Judge Halston said, looking over his reading glasses at Vaughn. But proceed carefully, Counselor. I am a police officer, Rourke said with a sneer. I know what perjury means. Good, Vaughn replied. He moved closer to the witness stand, because I am giving you one final opportunity to correct your testimony before we continue. The courtroom seemed to grow still. Did you demand a cash bribe from my client? And when she refused, did you remove a bag of cocaine from the left breast pocket of your tactical vest and plant it inside her vehicle? A collective gasp swept through the room. Rourke's face turned violently red. He gripped the sides of the witness chair and leaned forward. That is an absolute lie, he shouted. I am a decorated officer of the law. This woman is a drug dealer trying to destroy my reputation to save herself. Vaughn did not react. A cold smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. Officer Rourke, he said, his voice carrying clearly throughout the courtroom, are you completely certain that my client is a drug dealer named Tessa Monroe? Rourke scoffed and gestured toward Alana. I examined her identification myself. I arrested her. I know exactly who she is. Vaughn slowly turned toward the defense table and nodded. Alana stood. She no longer appeared frightened. The defeated posture of an exhausted civilian disappeared. In its place was the rigid, commanding stance of a federal agent. She reached inside her blazer, removed a gold FBI badge encased in leather, and placed it firmly on the wooden table. Let the record reflect, Vaughn announced, his voice taking on a triumphant and deadly calm, that my client's name is not Tessa Monroe. He looked directly at Rourke. She is Special Agent Alana Brooks of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Vaughn paused. And you, Officer Rourke, have just committed federal perjury on the official record. The silence inside the courtroom became absolute. It was heavy, suffocating, and completely paralyzing, the kind of silence that follows when the reality of an entire room has been violently shattered. No one moved. Officer Declan Rourke sat rigidly in the witness chair. Every trace of color drained from his face. The arrogant smirk that had defined him vanished, replaced by an empty stare of disbelief. His gaze dropped toward the gold shield resting on the defense table. Its polished surface reflected the harsh fluorescent lights. The letters FBI stamped into the badge seemed to strike him physically. He opened his mouth, perhaps intending to shout or deny everything, but his throat had gone dry. No sound emerged. Judge Halston was the first to move. He slowly lowered his reading glasses, his weathered expression hardening into pure judicial fury. He looked at the badge, then at Vaughn, and finally at the pale, sweating officer in the witness box. Counselor, the judge said in a dangerously low voice, you will explain exactly what is happening in my courtroom, otherwise I will hold every person involved in contempt. Vaughn remained composed. He casually opened his suit jacket, projecting complete control. Your Honor, as I stated, my client is Special Agent Alana Brooks of the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. He turned slightly so everyone in the courtroom could hear him clearly. She has been working undercover as part of a joint federal task force known as Operation Shattered Glass. The investigation concerned systematic extortion, evidence tampering, and civil rights violations within the 14th District of the Chicago Police Department. His eyes returned to the witness stand. The primary target is the man currently sitting in that chair. Assistant District Attorney Caldwell looked as though she had been struck by lightning. She stumbled backward and nearly collapsed into her chair. Her mind raced as the facts connected. The polished incident report, the missing body camera footage which Rourke had blamed on a battery failure, his excessive confidence on the witness stand. She had been manipulated. A corrupt officer had used her office and authority as weapons to send an innocent woman to prison. The realization turned her stomach. This is a stunt, Rourke suddenly shouted. His voice cracked with panic. He pointed a trembling finger at Alana. She's lying. You cannot walk into a courtroom with a fake badge and make accusations like this. He looked around desperately. I am a sworn officer of the law. Where's your evidence? Where's the proof? Vaughn smiled. It was not a friendly expression. It was the smile of a predator that had just recognized weakness. Your Honor, the defense requests permission to present Defense Exhibit A. He lifted the manila folder. It is a synchronized audio and video recording captured by a biometric device worn by Special Agent Brooks during the arrest. His eyes remained on Rourke. The recording completely replaces the conveniently unavailable footage from Officer Rourke's body camera. Judge Halston gave a sharp nod. "Proceed, counselor." He turned toward Rourke. "And, officer, I strongly recommend that you remain seated and silent until I give you permission to speak." A federal technician who had been sitting quietly in the back row, disguised as a law student, stepped forward. He connected a small encrypted drive to the courtroom's digital evidence system. The large screen mounted on the wall flickered to life. The courtroom filled with the heavy rhythm of windshield wipers and the sound of relentless rain. A crystal-clear first-person recording from Alana's hidden camera appeared on the screen. Everyone watched as the recorded image of Rourke approached the vehicle with his familiar swagger. His threatening words came through the speakers with perfect clarity. "Here's the situation, Tessa. I can charge you with reckless driving, tow your car, and leave you sitting in a cell. The legal fees will cost you thousands. Or we can take care of this right here." The recording continued. "You pay the fine directly to me and I allow you to go home." Caldwell covered her face with both hands. The courtroom listened to every incriminating word. Then the video showed Rourke pulling Alana from the vehicle and slamming her against the rain-soaked metal. Finally came the undeniable moment that destroyed him. In stunningly clear detail, the hidden camera recorded Rourke removing the small bag of cocaine from his own tactical vest and throwing it onto the passenger seat of the Honda Civic. His voice echoed through the courtroom speakers. "No one is going to believe a street addict over a decorated police officer." The video continued. "You had an opportunity to make this easy. Now I'm going to destroy your life." The recording ended. The screen froze on an image of Rourke's cruel and mocking expression. Silence returned to the courtroom. This time it carried the weight of approaching disaster. Rourke began breathing rapidly. His chest rose and fell as his gaze moved wildly around the room. He searched for an exit, a sympathetic face, or any possible escape from the nightmare he had created. There was none. Judge Halston brought down his gavel with the force of a gunshot. "Bailiffs, secure every door immediately. No one leaves this courtroom." The judge turned his furious gaze toward the witness stand. "Officer Declan Rourke, I am holding you in direct criminal contempt of this court." He pointed toward the frozen image on the screen. "Furthermore, based on the undeniable evidence presented here, I am referring you for immediate federal and state prosecution." Before Rourke could attempt to stand, the heavy courtroom doors opened. Unit Chief Bennett Cross entered, accompanied by 6 heavily armed FBI agents wearing tactical vests. Their boots struck the floor as they marched down the center aisle, each step sounding like the final toll for Rourke's career and freedom. Cross passed the prosecution table without stopping and walked directly toward the witness stand. He stared down at the trembling man seated there. "Declan Rourke," Cross said with absolute authority, "you are under arrest for civil rights violations, extortion, distribution of a controlled substance, evidence tampering, and federal perjury." His voice remained cold and unwavering. "Stand up and place your hands behind your back." Rourke slowly rose. His legs shook so violently that they could barely support him. Federal handcuffs closed around his wrists in the same way he had once restrained Alana. At that moment, he understood that his life as he knew it was over. He had chosen the wrong victim. The predator had become the prize. The interrogation room inside the FBI's Chicago field office was deliberately kept cold. The low temperature and harsh fluorescent lighting were designed to make suspects feel isolated, exposed, and uncomfortable. Rourke sat shivering at a metal table. His uniform, gun, and badge had been taken away. He now wore a plain federal holding uniform. Without the symbols of authority that had protected him, he appeared small, defeated, and far older than before. The heavy steel door opened. Special Agent Alana Brooks entered with Chief Cross. She no longer wore the cheap blazer or the exhausted expression of Tessa Monroe. She was dressed in a sharply tailored navy suit, and her posture projected unwavering confidence. She carried a large stack of manila folders and dropped them onto the table with a heavy thud. Rourke flinched. He refused to look at her and stared instead at his handcuffed wrists. "Hello, Declan," Alana said. She pulled out a chair and sat across from him. Her voice was calm, completely different from the terror she had pretended to feel on the rain-soaked roadside. "It has been a difficult day for you. I thought we should talk." Rourke remained silent, his jaw tightly clenched. Both his union representative and his expensive defense attorney had instructed him not to say anything. But the crushing weight of the evidence was slowly destroying his resolve. "You are facing the possibility of spending most of your remaining life inside a federal prison," Cross said as he leaned against the wall. "The perjury charge is serious by itself. Combined with the civil rights violations, narcotics distribution, and extortion, you will be imprisoned for a very long time." Cross studied him coldly. You will enter federal prison as a disgraced former police officer. I do not need to explain how difficult that existence will be." Alana leaned forward and tapped the top folder. "But here's the most important part, Declan. The investigation was never limited to you." She held his gaze. "You were simply the loudest and most careless link in a long chain." Alana continued. "Your rookie partner, Nolan Pierce, is sitting in another interrogation room nearby." Rourke's expression tightened. "Nolan is young. He is terrified. He does not want to spend his future in prison because his training officer forced him to witness crimes." Rourke's head snapped upward. His eyes widened with panic and betrayal. "Pierce doesn't know anything. He's only a foolish kid." "He knows enough," Alana replied smoothly. Her gaze cut through his defenses. "He has signed a complete cooperation agreement." She began listing what the young officer had revealed. "He told us about the street tax. He described the missing evidence from the property room. He explained how you and Sergeant Pierce transferred 30% of your illegal seizures to Captain Blaine Prescott in exchange for receiving the most profitable patrol assignments." The mention of Captain Prescott caused the final trace of color to disappear from Rourke's face. The structure protecting him was not merely weakening, it was collapsing completely. "We do not actually need your cooperation," Cross added. "We have the audio recording. We have the hidden camera footage. We have Pierce's fully supported testimony." He folded his arms. "We are going to dismantle the command structure of the 14th District." Cross looked directly into Rourke's eyes. "The only question is whether you want to receive the maximum possible punishment as the primary target or cooperate and preserve some possibility of freedom before you grow old." Rourke stared at Alana. For the first time, he truly saw the powerful federal agent who had orchestrated his downfall. Every action he had taken had been anticipated. Every decision had been calculated. Every crime had been turned against him. He drew a trembling breath. The full reality of his situation finally broke his resistance. "If I give you Captain Prescott," Rourke whispered, his voice hoarse and defeated, "and if I give you the ledger he keeps in the private safe inside his house, what can you do for me?" Alana leaned back. A profound sense of satisfaction settled over her. The trap had not merely captured one corrupt officer, it was about to destroy the entire organization surrounding him. "Start talking, Declan," she said. "Then we will determine what your honesty is worth." Soon afterward, Operation Shattered Glass launched the largest internal corruption raid in the history of the Chicago Police Department. FBI tactical vehicles surrounded the 14th District Station. Federal agents secured the building and locked down the evidence room. Search and arrest warrants were simultaneously executed at the homes of Captain Prescott, Sergeant Pierce, and several other officers involved in the scheme. The ledger surrendered by Rourke provided a detailed and undeniable map of the systematic extortion operation that had victimized residents of the South Side for years. The consequences were unprecedented. The mayor held an emergency press conference and promised complete reform and sweeping structural changes. The police commissioner resigned in disgrace. Assistant District Attorney Marissa Caldwell, deeply shaken by how close she had come to prosecuting an innocent person, completely revised her office's procedures for examining police testimony and reviewing mandatory body camera evidence. Later, Alana Brooks stood at the rear of the federal courtroom wearing her familiar trench coat as Declan Rourke received his sentence. Although he had cooperated with investigators, the severity of his crimes and his deliberate perjury in court resulted in a substantial sentence inside a maximum security federal prison without the possibility of early release. Captain Blaine Prescott received an even longer sentence. As the bailiffs led the shackled and broken Rourke from the courtroom, he briefly met Alana's eyes. There was no hatred left in his expression. There was only deep regret and the crushing realization that his own arrogance had destroyed him. Alana gave him a small, restrained nod, silently acknowledging that the case had reached its conclusion. Then she turned away and walked through the heavy courtroom doors. Outside, the rain over Chicago had finally stopped. The dark clouds were beginning to separate, allowing bright sunlight to reach the pavement. For the first time in a long while, the streets seemed slightly cleaner. If this intense story of corruption, justice, and the remarkable courage of an undercover FBI agent held your attention, press the like button. We regularly bring you thrilling, true-to-life crime stories that expose the darkest corners of the justice system. Share this video with your friends and leave a comment with your thoughts about Officer Rourke's downfall. Subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell for more explosive stories.